All right, we're live. Welcome to another episode of the Logicast. My name is BlankaKong. I'm joined by Gunner EOS, Huddle Wolf, and Mr. Esoteric Skills. This week's episode is going to be about the Monster Hunter Wilds beta that just passed in late October, early November. Let me pull up my notes here so that I can prepare. So, first of all, overall, just kind of like general feeling. I think the beta was fine. It didn't rock my world. It didn't blow me away, but I did have fun with it. And I'm glad that it lasted. I think 4 to 5 days. It lasted like basically, like 4 to 5 days, something like that. And that gave me enough time to really like dive in because it was definitely different to what I was expecting, to say the least. So we're going to do this in category fashion. So there's going to be 5 main topics that we're going to discuss. First is going to be graphics, fidelity, story, sound, and presentation. And then we'll move on to the next topic after that. It'll be that one, then gameplay and feel, then monster design, world design, then combat weapon function and feel and physics. Finally, what is it? General performance for the game. So we're going to start with graphics, fidelity, story, sound, and presentation. So graphics, I think overall were best in franchise. Textures were rich and very alive. I liked the overall look of the game and the way things moved and responded to each other. I enjoyed that very much. The sound is comparable to Monster Hunter World and Iceborne. I don't think there was any like new innovations when it comes to sound. I think the only new feature when it comes to sound design was there was sound effects coming out of the controller, so you would hear like rocks crumbling or just endemic life kind of hissing or moving about in the world. You would get that feedback from the controller. I was not a fan. I turned it off because it was distracting, so I didn't love that personally. The story seems more involved. It's a step above Monster Hunter World Iceborne in terms of, I guess, just overall just depth of the story. It doesn't feel as surface level as the world story. And there's definitely like a bigger cast of characters this time around, and you as the player character, you feel like more like involved, I guess, or you have like a bigger role. You're not just the typical new hunter in town and eventually become like the Jesus Christ of this Monster Hunter town or whatever. That's kind of like the cookie cutter like story format for most Monster Hunter games, and this one felt a little more like you're playing as an established hunter and you've been given an assignment to go investigate the White Wrath monster. And then finally, presentation. Presentation I thought was overall good. It wasn't great, and my biggest gripe was the UI, the user interface. I think the icons were very small, the text was very small, and overall, everything felt very cluttered, and I didn't love it. I wish that I can increase the size of the icons, and I wish that I can maybe eliminate certain aspects of the UI. You were given the option to do some of that, but it was very limited. That could change come the launch of the full game. I hope so. I hope that, for example, the health bar, I hope that I can extend the health bar from one side of the screen to the other. I've gotten used to the whole swirly effect that they have going on, but if I can eliminate that, that would be fantastic. And then as well as the item icons were pretty small on the screen. I didn't love that. I wish I could just increase the size a little bit. I know that they did that in order to kind of like immerse you into the world more and have you see more of the environment and the creatures and all that. But, you know, I'm an old Monster Hunter player, so I really like my very rigid, very visible, you know, pieces of UI information like my health bar, my sharpness bar, and my items. So, yeah, that's pretty much my overall part one for this talk. So, with that being said, I think who's next? It's Esoteric, right? Or is it Gunner?
Yeah, that would
All
be
right, brother,
me.
it's all you, man. What do you got?
All right, so for the first category, as you stated already, graphics, fidelity, story, sound, and presentation. I think the graphics were overall great. I tend to play my games in performance mode, which, for those of you who don't know, prioritizes frame rate over resolution. because I like a steady, frame rate no matter what it is. It can be 30, 60, or 20. I don't really care. As long as it's steady, that's all that really matters to me. And I noticed that there weren't any like significant dips. I noticed within my experience that it was pretty constant. Whether you was traversing through the lands or whether you were fighting a large amount of monsters, particularly the Doshugama, because like they roll in packs of three. um Even with the turf wars, between like Raidal, Doshugama, Balahara, I believe the monster's name is, like all their interactions that you witness during their battles, it did not drop frames, or if it did, it was pretty much negligible, which I can definitely appreciate, given the graphical enhancements that Monster Hunter Wilds provides. Um, the cutscenes, they were pretty cool. That's always been something that Monster Hunter has excelled in. All the intros that you see in the beginning of each games, where you see like the group of hunters fighting a particular monster. One of my faves was, I believe it's Generations Ultimate, where they're fighting the Barrioth, and you have the hunter with the hammer doing the almighty swing into kind of like, I believe it was like kind of like a Shoryuken or something like that to some degree. It kind of felt like that. Um, but yeah, they've always excelled in cutscenes and whatnot, and they continue to follow that tradition over to Monster Hunter Wilds, which is cool. Um, the sound, as you said, Kong, I agree. The sound and music were pretty much on par with Monster Hunter World. It felt the same, which isn't a bad thing because I appreciated the music and the sound bites from that game. They really did a good job. So why not carry it over, especially considering it's the same team. And the overall presentation, I would say is pretty good. Yes, to your point about all the stuff being like cluttered and kind of small, um, it's definitely a lot to kind of digest because in older Monster Hunter games, it wasn't that convoluted. You would just have like your health, your stamina, your items, and sharpness, and whatever icons associated with your character status ailments and your weapon. So, like for example, the charge blade, you'll have like the icon for the charge blade. If you were to pretty much stack your files in your sword or your shield, those things will prompt, and they were pretty overall digestible. But now with all the things that Wilds provides, they kind of, I guess, shrunken it a bit, and it's gonna take an adjustment for me because it's a lot going on. There's a lot of things that I didn't even scratch the surface with because I was still trying to learn the basics. Uh, and yeah, I guess I didn't touch on the story. Um, I didn't catch so much in regards to the story. I did know that the hunter did play quite a substantial role. Because when you first play the game, you're having a meeting, I believe, with the admiral or whoever's the leader of the faction during that time, and they put you on a specific mission. Um, but besides that, I didn't really like grasp the story, which is weird for me because I tend to gravitate towards story. I think I was more fixated on getting right into the action, so I kind of missed some of that story there. But overall, everything was good in my opinion. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it to you, Telly. What were your thoughts?
All right, so no need to repeat the categories. If you're listening, you kind of know them. So yeah, uh, the game looked pretty much on par with World, if not a little better. I did notice, which I don't know who to attribute that to, the beta or just the style Capcom's going for. The game did seem very muddy. Like there was kind of like it kind of felt like a brown kind of muddy filter was placed over the game because my character looked very different in terms of like definitive features from the character creator to the main game. I don't know what that is. I'm not gonna speak to that. Hopefully that filter isn't there because it was not there in World. Brief mention about the character creator, which I'll follow that under presentation and graphics. Character creator, extremely robust. You can definitely deep dive with your character. Lots of options, lots of voices, plenty of animations to see your character move, from your facial animation to your like running animations and even swinging with the greatsword, so you can see how your character behaves when they're doing a thing. I know not everybody cares about that, but I know some people really do care about that, so you won't be disappointed. Fidelity, the game ran fine. I did notice that it would run a little slow. Like it felt a little off. Um, and that was because when you boot up the beta, it starts it in uh, fidelity mode, which most games start it in performance mode, and you can choose to put it in fidelity. But for whatever reason, the beta started in fidelity. So fidelity kind of shoots for 30 FPS while having 4K in the graphics, while performance mode tends to shoot for consistent, I should say, 60 FPS while having the game run at like 1080p or 1440p. It wasn't until Esoteric mentioned that you can do that in the main menu, not the game menu, which is odd, but the main menu, that I was now hitting 60 FPS consistently, and the game felt a lot smoother. So, quick fix if if you're on console, that's your option. PC has different options, but if you value keeping that consistent 60, obviously put it in performance mode, like day one when this comes out. Story, obviously, as anybody who's played the beta or seen the cutscene and the trailers can attest to, this game is definitely shooting for a more, I'm not going to say cinematic, but it is shooting for a more concrete, cohesive storyline. World had one, but now Wilds is kind of amping that up. So you have named characters which will play important roles. Your character is the main character, but you're backed up by a supporting cast, which is kind of one of the reasons why they will more than likely eliminate Monster Hunter language, because your character speaks now. You're not a silent protagonist. So obviously, Capcom, the designers, felt that you speaking Unga Bunga wouldn't translate well to long cutscenes. World had it, but World's cutscenes were very short. So that's why they kept Monster Hunter language. Could be wrong. They could add it in the full game. I don't think so. This game is shooting for a story, so it's either English, Japanese, or any of the languages that exist in the real world. With story, we saw a lot of kind of cinematic segments. The beta had us run on a on rails circuit pace while we were going after the one of the character's sisters. That was on rails, and we had to protect her by shooting sonic bombs at the monster to avoid hitting her. I feel they're going to add more of that or more situations like that. We'll just see how egregious this is, because at the end of the game, it's a hunting game. People want to hunt. I'll play God of War Ragnarok if I want some cinematic experience with action gameplay. Sound was fine. Music was good. The shots, I primarily used bow and arrow and bow gun, so the shots felt crisp. They felt like I was shooting a gun. It had that like oomph to it when I shot in the sound department. Yeah, also not a fan of the whole sounds coming out of your controller. I know some people like that. Cool if you do. I don't. I am glad there was a setting to turn them off. So to each their own on that department. And as far as presentation goes, yeah, I think the game looks well. I'm digging the day night cycle and the weather implementation they added. We only got to see sandstorms in the desert because that's the only area we had access to. I imagine the other areas will have different weather effects, could affect the hunt, could bring out monsters and rare endemic life. So that's gonna add a whole real world dynamic to the game world. So I'm digging that. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts on our first category. I will now pass it over to Wolf for his thoughts.
Okay, thank you. But much like everybody else, I had no issues with the graphics. For me, graphics was never a leading factor to a video game. So World's graphics was amazing. Not World's. Wild's graphics was amazing. I will admit it probably is better than World and Iceborne's. So I give it its due, its credit there. Story is not so existent to me. I'm not a story person. I cannot tell you if I remember the last story for any Monster Hunter game I've ever played. It's just, for me, Monster Hunter story. No, I don't know him. I don't know any of them. So that's that. However, I do love the fact that the hunter now has voice lines to go along with the dialogue in the cutscenes. It doesn't make you seem like a mute that's just standing there observing the situation and then having to take responsibility for it. They now show emotions, and I do appreciate that they Capcom put in the effort for that. I do like that. It's given me, when it comes down to that, it gives me like a feel of where there's going to be like this they can easily set this game up to have multiple expansions instead of just like one big one, like how we had World and then Iceborne. It's the way that they have all these characters so in depth with their lines and their names, and the white wraith being such a mystery. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like multiple stories to go with this game. If Capcom chooses to explore that, it wouldn't surprise me. Palico talking English, big no. Turn it real quick. That was by far the most annoying sound effect in any video game I've played in a very long time. I agree with Kong. The UI is small. It was hard to see certain things on the screen, but I have natural eyesight issues. So maybe playing on the Steam Deck would be better for me because my eyes can get closer to the screen instead of playing on a TV. But there's nothing that can justify the HP bar for me. I think it's horrible. I don't like it. I don't like even more so when a big attack is coming and it starts to shake profusely. Like it's just like starts like as if your heart rate is going up. I don't like that personally, because the way I look at it is, in Monster Hunter you should be avoiding attacks naturally. So I don't feel like there should be a warning that this attack is going to kill me by having my HP bar vibrating. I think it should be more like, well, you got hit by the attack and it caused you a card. The next time you fight the monster, you know not to get hit by that attack. That's just me and my old Monster Hunter ways. But overall presentation, I think, was very good. It wasn't anything that's like right now the demo is over, the beta is over. I don't miss it. I don't want it to come back per se, but I did enjoy playing it over and over and over again. The same 4 monsters over and over and over again. I did enjoy it overall. So that's the first category for me on how my point of view was.
All right, cool. Moving on to category 2, gameplay and feel. This is going to be a very short segment for me. Mm-hmm. So movement feels more fluid, sometimes too fluid. And I know that sounds kind of weird. Like, well, wouldn't fluidity be a good thing? Yeah, sure. But I think this might be just like a me problem, as far as like, me playing Monster Hunter for so long. That I have certain expectations for how the game should feel. And this game feels too fluid in terms of the combat. It feels a little too slippery. And that's hard to articulate. It's something you just gotta feel yourself. It feels the most fluid or too fluid when you're on your mount. That thing is way too, like, sporadic. It's like, you need to calm the fuck down, buddy. And I know you could stop the mount via R2 to do whatever you want to do, but like, I take the Palamutes in Monster Hunter Rise any day of the week over this fucking thing. personally. I don't love that certain segments of the map are like automated. Like, so when you're leaving town and you're about to go out to the overall map, and you have to kind of like use the sacred to hop on these like weird, tree branch platform things. And it's like I don't feel like I'm really controlling that. It feels very on rails. I don't love those segments personally, but that's just me. Feels like there's more subtle animation and movement in general, especially with like running and interacting with monster and positioning yourself. I feel like things are just a little too fast, or I don't know, just too fluid. And that might sound crazy to some people, but it's just what I took away from the gameplay and feel. And then overall, it feels very polished though. All things considered, it does feel like they spent a lot of time to make it, competitive with the standards of what gaming should feel like in today's landscape. So that's my overall feels on gameplay and feel. I have more to say on it, but it kind of fell into like combat, so I'm gonna save that for the combat discussion. So that's it for me for gameplay and feel.
Oh, well, some of my thoughts kind of align with yours, Kong. I definitely know what you mean as the game feeling like too fluid and whatnot. If I had to like equate it to something or compare it to something, it's kind of like when you have an animation that's drawn versus motion capture. It kind of feels like that, where it's like, you know, the hand drawn animations are pretty much keyframes. So the term that you would typically use is like a little bit more rigid or whatnot to it. Whereas motion capture, it captures every movement, no matter how subtle it is. Um, so I definitely agree with you in terms of the fluidity. It definitely felt weird for me initially at first, but I kind of gotten accustomed to it. Um, as for the sacred, I would say it's a little more tolerable. Unlike aggro from freaking Shadow the Colossus, I hate that damn horse. It was very egregious in terms of its movements, and it annoyed the hell out of me. But for me personally, the sacred is a bit more tolerable, and I can see where people would absolutely hate maneuvering it because of how it moves. But I've dealt with worse mounts before, so
Hmm.
I'm okay with this one. Um, yeah, but overall, I would say the game definitely felt super responsive. Like there wasn't moves that I couldn't get out. Um, that I felt that I had to have like some tight controls with. Like when I was utilizing the weapons, every move came out when I wanted it to. There was enough window of opportunity for it to come out. Um, even even if you were to like prematurely press the button, it will follow through with that maneuver. I don't know if you guys have encountered that or have had that experience, or if you were to put it latently, where like you kind of waited for the follow up attack to initiate. Um, I felt like the game was super responsive, and like the inputs were as well. Um, another thing that might be maybe the only one that I enjoyed. The only person here that enjoyed it was the haptic feedback and the vibrations on the control. I kind of like that. It was pretty cool. It wasn't obnoxious. Um, and yeah, yeah, you pretty much touched on the other things that I kind of aligned with you on. So yeah, that was pretty much my take for now. What say you, Gunner?
Cool. All right. So yes, gameplay. I definitely feel the fluidity, even more so than World, a million times more than Generations Ultimate. That game is a stark reminder because we've been playing it recently. So it's like, yeah, like if my character moves left, it's like you see all the animations of her like turning on her heel and shifting her weight to run to the other side. You see all of that, and
Yeah.
For some players it's gonna turn them off, or it's gonna take getting used to, because even in World you didn't have that many animations. For example, if you're turning sharply left or right on your character, that's gonna take getting used to. It's cool, and I just think it's an adjustment phase. We'll adjust to that pretty easily. The circuit, I think I might be the only one in this group who didn't really hate it, or not hate it, but didn't really have like issues with it. What I did have an issue, which is another thing you can rectify in the menus, is the auto run to the monster or your objective. That was annoying. So I turned that off. So when I choose to run to the monster, we will run to the monster. Pretty much, I just have to train my brain, which would take all of a day when the main game comes out, to just automatically press R2 when I call him out, unless I want to move with him. The reason why I like the auto move is I want him to automatically move when I'm in combat. So, I'll touch on that in the combat section a bit more, but I think that's why he has the auto run. And if I have to choose between him automatically running when I call him, or him like standing still at a dead stop until I press the button to make him move, I personally would have him automatically run the moment I call him. But I'll touch more on that in the combat section, because my feelings with the circuit have a lot to do with combat, which is why I like, which is why I like him, and I like him more than the Palamute. The feel, not the game felt fine to me. Again, this is more of a combat thing, but as far as moving my character in the world, interacting with the environment, it felt fine. The few instances I met with water in the little oasis in the desert, it didn't feel like it was a hindrance. It bogged me down. It's like, no, I'm just running through water. Cool little water effect. Neat. The game physics is pretty on point though, because I remember when I was fighting a Ray Dow at the top of a sand dune, and I got hit. My character's ass flew all the way down that sand dune. As like, imagine if I if you threw a small child off a sand dune and his ass rolled down the dune. So I don't know, that was pretty cool. So like the physics is definitely on point with the environment and how your character interacts with it, which is neat. It's neat. I mean, maybe like in month 3 of the game, I might find it fucking annoying and it will make me rage. But right now, as far as the beta is concerned, that's neat that the physics actually, there are physics. It's nice. So yeah, that's my gameplay and feel. I'll have more about that when we get to combat, but general, that's it for me.
Yeah, for me, I'm aligned more with Eso and Kong with the secret controls. I think Palamute is way better in comparison. Overall, it's something I have to get used to it, because you have to use it.
Mhm.
It's not an option. it's a have to. The way they designed the game. The area that they gave us for the beta was large enough for me to feel like I'm roaming, and it fed my curiosity to find every corner of that map. So I'm expecting large maps on the overall game when it comes out, because I feel like the dunes was pretty large for the beta. The character animations, there's this thing that the characters do. It's like when they get a hard knockdown. Now I'm using fighting game terminologies, but when they get knocked down by a heavy attack, it's like he'll get up and crawl before he gets on his feet. It felt weird to me, because
That's true.
it just felt so weird to me. And I'm here screaming at the screen, like, get up, get up, get up. And I'm getting this short crawl animation. I was like, oh my God. It was stressful. It was just adding to the stress of the fight. So I have mixed feelings about the animations. I think they're wonderfully flushed out. But I can agree with Kong in a sense of where there's this rigidness that I'm used to and can appreciate. But I also understand that we're not in that time anymore, and there's going to be more in-betweens for major movements. So that means that the animations are going to be more flushed out. One small feature I love, and I think I appreciate it because I've been a blade master for so many Monster Hunters, is the weapon sharpness bar. I love that because as a blade master, especially playing older style Monster Hunter games, there've been too many times where I'll swing, my sharpness goes down mid animation, and then I'm caught in an attack string, and then I bounce and the monster retaliates. But in this one, it allows you to see where your sharpness is. So you as a player have to make that conscious decision to stop, sharpen, and re-engage the monster. And I think that's a really helpful information when you're in the heat of the fight and sharpness is important. Because I can imagine that the monsters in this game are going to be hard. When I mean hard, I mean they're going to have some challenging situations. So you definitely want to keep your sharpness up if you're using a bladed weapon. But that's it for me, really. It's everything else goes into the monsters and the weapons. So I'm done with this section as well.
Alrighty. So next topic or category is going to be monster design and world/level design. So what do I have here? So Doshugama, Balahara, and Chatakabra are okay, but are kind of lame to fight. And I understand that these are the tutorial monsters and they're designed, air quotes, lamely on purpose, but I can't help that I've been playing Monster Hunter for a long time, so they didn't wow me. But I will say that Doshugama was, the strongest amongst the three of those guys. Ray Dow was the fourth monster that you could hunt. He was probably the least consistent populated monster because he was the strongest one. I think has a strong design and was a fun and challenging thing to fight. He feels like the most classic Monster Hunter monster in the beta, so I'm glad they put him in because that gave me reassurance for the game, honestly, because I was very underwhelmed in my first night playing the game until I think me and Gunnar were doing a little multiplayer at the end of that first night, and we fought Ray Dow at the end, and it gave me, I had like a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, the Monster Hunter's still here. Okay, there's a chance, The world level design is very dynamic. There's a lot of verticality and activity, which I think is cool from like a curiosity. Ooh, this is a new game standpoint. Like I like that stuff, but I could see it getting old pretty fast. At least that's how I felt with World. When I wanted to just kind of dive into the gameplay loop, dealing with just all of the climb this and go this and do all this extra, like I was just like, oh dude, just take me to the fucking monster. Like I'm it feels like if you're visiting a place and you've been there 1,000 times and like you're on a tour and like, oh, here's the monument for the, I'm like, I know it feels like that. And I feel that the dynamic weather system is a great feature and callback to Monster Hunter DOS, which we never got in the States. They had like a similar like seasonal kind of monster population system in that game, but it was very obnoxious. As you can imagine, this was on PS2. So that system is akin to that. Is akin to the Monster Hunter DOS seasonal feature, which I think they did a great job with it. I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun, kind of like waiting for monsters to populate and stuff. Should be interesting. It might get annoying, if I'm farming a particular monster, but I like the idea of it because it makes sense in the world. So that's it for category 3 for me. Esoteric, what do you got?
Okay, I would have to say I would agree in regards to the monsters. That Doshugama, Chatakabra, and Balahara, they were pretty much easy, and I can see where you would have concern as to them being like underwhelming and whatnot. And Raydal was definitely the main event. It was kind of like some what do you call them, jobber wrestlers. They just come in just to get beat down, just to fill up the time slots, and then you have like the main event where the actual wrestlers come in to duke it out or whatnot. Although I kind of disagree with them not feeling Monster Hunter-esque. I think they all kind of contribute to like what Monster Hunter has provided over the years. It's just that, being a seasoned hunter like we are, we tend to overlook that. Like, we're not paying attention to the bird wyverns or like the leviathans, like the cephadrome and whatnot. But they did give off like the Pelagus feel that the Doshigama had, and like this the leviathan and whatnot. But it's just where we were so eager to get to the meat and potatoes, which is Raydal. I personally feel. Um, as for the environment, now I felt that the environment was kind of overwhelming for me, because of the simple fact that, first and foremost, none of the stuff uh, that you acquire in the game you don't really get to keep. So it's like, it didn't really give me much of an incentive to really search for anything, honestly. So like, if I needed potions, if I needed, things of that sort, I can just go into the chest, and I had enough to be able to continuously fight whatever monster without running out and having to scrounge for more. And pretty much everything at the demo is at your disposal. And not to mention, you have unlimited whetstones, so you can just sharpen your blade or whatnot. And you didn't have to really mine or go bug farming, because those things didn't matter. At least to me. Um, However, I would say that what I do appreciate, along with the weather, as you already mentioned, is the interactivity between certain environments in the monster. And I saw that particularly with Ray Dow. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the segment where he goes into like this area where um, it's like a crater, and all the rubble there seems to be like galvanized or whatnot. And it has like a very nice like bluish grayish color to it associated with it. Um, what I did notice is that with Raydal's attacks, when he's over there, he leaves an aftershock as he's using that move. So like, let's say for example, one of his biggest moves that I'm familiar with is his wing attack. When he does it in the sand, it's regular, but when he does it in that particular area, it leaves a trail of electricity as it follows through with him. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, because it opens up the avenues and the floodgates for like, well, with other monsters that are at their environment, what are they capable of? Like, what are their limitations outside of their environment, and what are they expected to do within their environment? So it definitely added an extra depth to that. It definitely forced me to be a little more cautious with the monster, because in the sand I could be super aggressive, but with that rubble and that crater area, I had to be a little more apprehensive, and kind of hold back on my attacks and be a little more decisive. So I definitely appreciated that. Um, and yeah, what I also liked as well that I wanted to add was that there was multiples of the same monster on the field. Like, certain instances, I saw like maybe two or three Chatacabras. I saw like two Doshugamas. I'm not sure if there's a max limit on it, or do they appear as the other monsters leaving? Because I believe in World it was maybe uh, three or four, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but it seems like in this game that there's a lot more. Um, so yeah, that was my take on that.
Okay, so me next. Monster design. I mean, they were fine. Chatacabra and Balahara. These like some about to cast a spell with some of these names. And Doshugama, they were they were they were fine. I think Chatacabra is a little bit more menacing than like Great Jaggeris, but not by much. Um, Funny enough, I did actually I did enjoy fighting Balahara, and I usually dislike fighting the Leviathans, they tend to be too like fucking squiggly and all over the damn place. And I enjoyed fighting him. He was fun to fight, which is odd for me because I usually groan when I gotta fight a Leviathan. I'm like, all right, here we go. But he was actually enjoyable to fight. I did like how he would curl around the weird kind of like L-shaped rock formations in the desert. But when he would do it, he would make it unstable, and if you hit it, it would knock him down and cause damage. I felt like there was a cool interaction with him. Ray Dow was obviously the standout for the beta. He felt more like a Monster Hunter monster. He had kind of like the only thing I kind of relate it to is the Nergigante effect, where he would kind of, I guess, crystal up his wings and his tail, and if you break it, it's like a flinch thing, and you would see the little crystal effects on the floor. It's a nice touch. Ray Dow is a very fun monster to fight. If there's more like Ray Dow, which some of the monster designs we've seen of the monsters that have been revealed to us, I think we're going to get a wide swath of styles and attack patterns and modalities with some of these monsters. So I can kind of forgive the jobber monsters, as we're calling them. To me, they felt Monster Hunter-ish. The only thing that didn't feel like, bro, what are you even doing here, is Chatacabra. Like, I would just beat him silly to the point it was like I didn't even really get to see a lot of his moveset because half the time he was on the floor. So I'm gonna attribute that to maybe like the beta, because Monster Hunter tends, when they demo things, they tend to make everything very, very, very significantly easier, because obviously they don't want to scare off their potential customers by giving them,
That
a
makes sense.
Chatacabra, because we'll see stuff on Reddit, which we've already seen it. Yo, Chatacabra's too hard. I can't beat this monster. This game is ass. So I'll give that to the demo. Maybe February Chatacabra is going to be a little buff. I doubt it, but we'll see. And as far as the world and level design, I think it's cool. I do agree with Kong. I think after a while, once we've seen all the sites and we've go ooh and ah, and that's really neat, that's really cool. We're gonna teleport to the camps to get to the monster. It's gonna happen. In the beta, I was running to all the monsters because, again, I like riding the circuit, so I enjoyed that aspect. But I think once we're in our 200th hour of this game, we're going to do just like World, just like Iceborne, just like Rise and Sunbreak. We are going to be teleporting to those camps because I need my damn Rathalos Ruby, and I'll give a shit about the sunset right now. I want
Yep.
the Rathalos Ruby. So right now, it's like the honeymoon period, but when, Monster Hunter is like the wife you've been living with for 60 years. Like, I know how you look like. Let's just skip straight to it, right? But, we're in the honeymoon period. So, and it's going to be like that with a lot of the new areas, but yeah, we're definitely going to be teleporting after a while. But be that as it may, the worlds actually look nice. They look very nice. There was a couple different biomes even in the sand desert area. You had your traditional giant dunes. You had your little oasis, which was nice. You had your crystal, kind of like rocky, you know, uh, mountain range type area. The home base of Ray Dow was cool with the electrified floor. So you'd have nice visual effects. But especially us, when we're deep into it, it's about the monster, it's about the part, and it's about, I really hope this doesn't triple card us because everything one shots after a while. So the world's gonna get kind of faded to the background. But right now it is nice, and we will all have a favorite area that we like to hunt in. So that's gonna happen. But that's just video games. That's when when you're a certain hour in the video game, it becomes a video game after a while, and that's no knock on the world. Capcom is doing a fine job with level design. So that's my thoughts on topic number 3.
Yeah, you said a lot of good points in my personal opinion. I think you all said points that I can agree with. I definitely do agree that I personally feel Ray Dow is the only monster of the 4 of them in this particular demo beta that was more Monster Hunter-ish. Dojugama made me feel like I wasn't even playing Monster Hunter. Like I don't. He was so sporadic, so random, so all over the place. He was literally a wild animal. So I guess it fits the theme for the game. Chadacabra, I used him as practice when I tried a weapon for the first time. So instead of fighting a Dojugama or a Raid Dao, which would have just cost me a card, probably frustrate everybody else on the team, I used Chadacabra to at least get an idea of how the weapon is supposed to use. He doesn't really have much moves, but he's worse. He's the worst of all 4 monsters by far. I agree with that. Honestly, I do not like the swarm mechanic thing. I don't. It got confusing for me. It's probably something I'm just gonna have to get used to. Not have to. Well, yeah, I have to get used to it if I'm gonna choose to play the game, right? I personally didn't like the swarm mechanic. I don't like when small monsters interfere with the boss monsters. I've never liked that mechanic. I never will like that mechanic. And then World, Iceborne, Rise, and Sunbreak took that mechanic out. And I feel like with the swarm mechanic, it's bringing that mechanic in back again. And I just don't like it. I feel like it should just focus on just me and the boss monster. But I guess it really wouldn't be a monster experience if every monster was a single roaming creature and don't have the understanding or the natural, I guess, process of wanting to be with species of its own kind and traveling to protect each other and so forth and so forth. Like that's the lot. Okay. Has anybody been able to tell when a monster is about to roar? Because for me, it like it just happens. It's like one of the few things that doesn't have any animation to it.
There's a lot of
It just
moves that don't feel like they have heavily telegraphed startup, and roars do kind of feel like they kind of just happen, and that might be by design. So I agree with you compared to old games.
Yeah, because I'm especially using the greatsword. I use roars to help apply pressure and to stay on the monster because it's easy to avoid roars with the greatsword. But it wasn't so easy with practice in this game. And I know when we get the real game, as time goes on, it's gonna get there. But for me, I'm only making notes of what I played, of not what I can play or potentially play. So obviously my opinion will probably change on that.
So to quickly answer your question about that, it was kind of hard for every other monster for me, except Doshugama. Doshugama, I could always kind of relatively predict when he was going to roar, because when he would roar, I would see him rotate his shoulders. He would rotate his shoulders and then roar. So I was trying to test it with the bow's new perfect dodge mechanic, and Doshugama was the only monster I was able to, maybe 80% of the time, perfect dodge through his roar. So I think it'll be more, you have to notice when the monster kind of literally, this goes back to the animations that we were talking about in graphics and fidelity. You'll have to notice when the monster is literally prepping to like use his vocal cords.
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done when you have a million particle effects going on and, longsword fucking, going Bushido mode. So it's easier said than done. It'll probably be a lot easier when it's a one-on-one fight. So to answer your question, Doshugama was the only one I can constantly see when it would roar.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. The wars was hard for me. But overall, the map to me was easy to traverse. I think it was it's expansive. I didn't get confused with the exception of the village area. I would get confused when I'm trying to run through the village. There was this village area, if you guys didn't run into it,
Oh,
with like huts, and at night people would be there.
Yeah,
No,
I ran
haven't.
into it.
I-
You
ran
couldn't
into okay,
interact
good.
with
Somebody.
anything there, but it was there.
Mm.
Okay.
But it was hard to. It's easy to enter, but hard to exit. Especially to get to the other side, which a lot of times, if you're gonna go fight Chadacabra, if you take the low route, you would run into the village. So for me, it's not even a complaint really. It was just that's the only part of the map that was hard to navigate through. But everything else, I like the way the map was. I had my experience with the demo was constant running or changing areas, especially those Gama and Ray Dao.
Yeah.
So it was like literally they will go to you run up to them, you hit them twice, then they'll change areas again, and then it became a game of cat and mouse, where it's just like I'm just constantly chasing the monster. I felt like I was fighting Gypseros from older Monster Hunter games. It's like okay. I get to him. I finally get to him. He's changing areas again. I didn't like that personally, but those are just those two monsters because the other two didn't do that. They would ultimately fight you.
I noticed that about Ray Dow too.
Yeah.
It was tedious. But other than that, the fights were nice and solid fights. And yeah, that's my take on the monster and map experience.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and be quick about this next section. This is the media section, I think, but let's get into it. So, section 4: combat, weapon function, feel, and physics. So, combat feels, in my opinion, unimpactful and kind of soft, lacks resistance. The original example I was using when we were first discussing it, in private, was it's like the difference between punching a solid wall and punching like a padded wall. And I read a better analogy, and somebody said it's like painting, using a paintbrush versus cutting something. And that's exactly how it feels. It feels like when I'm using certain weapons, or most weapons, melee weapons, I'm just kind of painting the monster. I'm not really cutting or fighting it. I'm just kind of like caressing it with something. And it was just like, what the, like it just didn't have that umph. Focus mode feels very strong and kind of puts the combat on rails. In past Monster Hunter games, even World, in Rise to a degree, most weapons, melee-wise, were about positioning, understanding the matchup. It felt like, in a lot of ways, like a fighting game, where you are in the map or on the level, whether you're in a corner, in the middle of the field, your matchup, like all these things mattered. And in this game, that still applies, but focus mode allows you to kind of like lock in and kind of precisely pick where you want attacks to land, kind of eliminating the need to kind of like understand your character's like positioning and what that means to the weapon in terms of the matchup with whatever you're fighting, in addition to the terrain that you're on, right? Like all these things kind of play into it. And I feel that focus mode kind of eliminates a lot of that, and that's by design. And focus mode also is an important feature because it's important toward the new tenderizing wounding system, which is going to be pretty important for not only dealing damage but getting additional materials. So focus mode, it's like a hate-love thing. I like it because it does kind of make the fight easier, and it's a necessary component. It's for the gameplay loop, but I kind of hate that like it takes away some of the legacy skill needed to play a game like this. And that's just kind of like I guess, air quotes, elitist boomer take, but that's how I feel. And then I played a variety of weapons, and I wrote like just one sentence per weapon, and I'll just kind of run through that, and then I'll let the next person go. So Lance, I didn't love the Lance. I think I could still play it, but it does feel a lot slower and a lot weightier than in past games. So I don't love that, but they did compensate that with a forward dash. So it's like I think I can work with it. Hammer, I think, felt the best. It felt the most true to form, with a lot more pivoting and positioning options. With using the slinger, it has like a new slinger move where like it is exclusive to Hammer, where if you're charging the hammer, you can sling to a better position, which is awesome. I think that's great. I didn't write any notes for Greatsword, but I did play Greatsword briefly, and Greatsword I think sits with Hammer as far as like feeling true to form in this game with the most impact based on what I've played. Light bowgun is easier to pick up and play in this game. It's less about managing items to make ammo and more about managing ammo types and special attachments and shot types, which I think is a step in the right direction. I think it makes the weapon more approachable. Ammo no longer has levels and are infinite, basically, for the most part. Like your normal pierce shots, those are infinite ammo, which is it allows you kind of dive into the gameplay aspect instead of the preparation aspect of bow gunning. Bow, very good management and management loop between trigger arrows, arc shot, and normal arrows. Coatings are now infinite, so that was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun playing with bow. I think bow is probably going to be my range weapon of choice in this game. Longsword, very easy to pick up and play, and it has a very deep combo pool. Produces results with little effort. This weapon feels incredibly broken to me. I think it's too strong, but its purpose is to be that weapon, is to be that kind of entry level weapon for newer players or players who don't want to kind of provide, put too much effort into like their gameplay, and they want to win and do well. It's kind of like the Sagat, if we're going to use fighting game terms, the Sagat or the Terry Bogard of like Monster Hunter. It's just like it's the most. I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna get heat. It's the most brain dead weapon in the game. Sorry. That's how I feel. Hunting Horn, it feels more like Monster Hunter World Hunting Horn with some new features, the new AOE buffs. The AOE buffs existed in World, but in this game they're more streamlined. You kind of just pop them. So I think Hunting Horn is going to be more about maximizing your party's damage and kind of giving out buffs. Lastly, Gunlance. Gunlance feels a little faster than Lance, and it has a lot of different options to use the explosives, deeper combo potential. Combos are so important in this game. The you can cancel so many different things into other things, and the combo pool feels way deeper than it has in any Monster Hunter game. So I think a lot of fighting game players and people who like flashy combos are going to have a lot of fun with this game because the combo potential is through the roof with melee weapons, especially in this game. And I think Longsword is going to be the king of that, but I think the other weapons have a stake to that. So yeah, that's my combat weapon and physics section. So Esoteric, it is all you, my friend.
Ooh, well, damn. Okay. So, I first and foremost, I absolutely agree with your paintbrush and cutting analogy. That's how I kind of felt about the game. I don't know. I had a discussion with you guys and Wolf. I don't know if you remember, but when the game was actually being showcased, I kind of looked at it and said that it didn't look like we would get that oomph that we typically get in Monster Hunter, and it kind of pretty much confirmed my suspicions when I actually played the beta. So it does have that kind of feel to it, and it's more so with certain weapons as opposed to like others, which is why I'm kind of shocked that you didn't really like the Lance as much, which makes sense because disclaimer, I haven't played the Lance until this game, and because of that, because of not having the necessary knowledge of prior Lances, I absolutely loved it because it felt steady, it felt solid. It felt like a turn-based RPG with me going against the monster. I would just stick and move, and then the monster would attack, and then I have my shield up and I guard it, and I just felt so powerful with the Lance. But I did do some research just to get better acquainted with previous ones, and you guys are right. For those who've played previous lances, it was way more solid, way more durable, had much more utility with it. But since I haven't had that experience, I guess it's kind of a less of a bias there because I enjoyed it a lot, and I just felt the impact as I was like poking the monster. It felt really really satisfying. Um, you know, I also played a couple of other weapons. My favorite being, as you guys already know, the charge blade, um, which I would kind of segue into the focus mode or whatnot. So at first, I was a little upset with focus mode because initially my thoughts, due to my ignorance, I thought that some of my moves from the charge blade was tied behind the focus attack, which technically it is, but it's not the one that I felt was like the most devastating, which is the Savage Axe mode. That's the mode where the axe of the weapon starts to spin and you're hitting from multiple attacks at a time. That wasn't the case after further experimentation. Another way to unlock that is by doing a guard point. So when you do a perfect guard, you can kind of go into that. It's still a condition in which that you have to be attacked, and I'm a little bummed out about it because of the fact that in prior Monster Hunter games, you all you had to do was charge it, so you can activate it at any given time. It wasn't situational, but that's okay. Um, and one thing I did love about it was that you can charge the files directly into your shield, so you don't have to do this combo where you're supposed to like pretend that you're unleashing the files and then go into like a spinning attack that charges your files into the shield. No, you can just directly take those files that you've accumulated and put them directly into your shield, which is phenomenal. Another adjustment that they did, which is also great, is that you can charge files on top of files. So there's two indicators. There's one where the files are full, and then there's another indicator where they become bright yellow and they have like this blast kind of symbol um, coming out the end of the files. So that signifies that you've charged the files within the files and they cause for even more damage. And you have your traditional being able to charge the sword into the shield, where you would attack and it'll deal extra damage and follow up damage with that. So I love the charge blade. The charge blade is great. Um, going back to the focus mode, I think that they incorporated the focus mode in this way due to the fact that the monsters are a bit more organic with their movement. You know, in traditional Monster Hunters, even World, the monsters would traditionally rotate 90 degrees and they'll have certain like rigid tells to them that will allow you to have better calculations with aligning up your shots and whatnot. But based on my experience in this game, the monsters are pretty amorphous. Like they move so fluid and so sporadic that it's sometimes really hard to get a good shot in. So I think that's why they incorporated the focus mode to level the playing field. And you know, after adjusting to it, I kind of like it. And this, you know, even though it's also a necessity, so I had to learn to like it anyway. Um, Now moving back to the other weapons, loved hammer. I've played hammer in briefly in other games. Definitely, as what Kong said, it felt true to its original form. Um, you know, I loved being able to position myself in the monster's face. I felt so powerful, felt so impactful. It kind of disregarded the notion of the analogy of the like paintbrush and knife um, comparison. Uh, so I enjoyed that. I already spoke about the lance. Sword and shield, broken AF. That weapon is extremely broken. Oh my god, it felt little to no effort playing that weapon. But I did love it though. It was enjoyable. I had no problems with it. Um I also briefly played with the switch axe. The switch axe was fun. I stopped playing with it in 3 Ultimate. Completely different weapon from then till now. Might give it a little more of a go. Uh not charge blade. Excuse me. Great sword was pretty fun. It maintained its traditional values, and they gave them a lot of upgrades to it. Insect glaive looks fun, but it's not for me. That weapon is absolutely not for me. Like I couldn't fully grasp it. The things that I did grasp, it was fun, but I was like, nah, let me put this down. I'm making Killick look bad. Um, and then I also tried the heavy bow gun, which I need more time with it. It was an adjustment for someone who is not accustomed to playing gunner. I'm so used to playing blade master, so that definitely was an adjustment. The only projectile weapon that I had the most fun with and was able to adapt to was the bow, because it incorporates some of the inputs that the other guns normally don't do. For example, if I charge the bow, if I press R2, like R2 unsheaths the weapon. If I press R2 with the bow, it automatically fires the weapon. With the other gunner weapons, I have to pretty much, if I'm not mistaken, I have to unsheath it first, then be able to fire it. So it kind of like threw me off course. Um, but yeah, those were pretty much all the weapons that I played. They all bring a lot to the table. I enjoyed most of them, but the last two just wasn't for me. Maybe I'll give it some more time and more experimentation, but as of right now, they're not for me.
Okay, mine's gonna be very short because I only use two weapons. I only desire to use two weapons. I only use the bow and light bow gun. So focus mode. As a guy who's only using range and will probably only use range for wilds, focus mode did not get in the way. It did not bother me. It was just there. Focus mode is tied to L2 by default for those that don't know. That's also the button you use to aim the bow and aim your gun. So technically, if you're bow gunning or using a bow, you're always in focus mode. Because it's one and the same. So I didn't really feel that jarring aspect that my Blade Master bros were talking about. It just felt like, oh, okay, when I press L2, because I'm aiming anyway, I see the wound opening. Focus mode didn't seem busted to me. It just felt like a tool that I use. Like especially with light bowgun. Light bowgun to pop the wounds, you have to shoot the new mines. You could plant one in the ground for the demo, and you can shoot 3. So anytime I shot a mine, you could charge it up, shoot it at the wound, pops the wound, bada bing, bada boom, we're done. Bow was very different. Bow, you would have to get on one knee and charge up your arrow, and you can either do it at 1 tick or 3 ticks. And if you do it at 3 ticks, it would launch a flurry of homing arrows into the wound, and then you would do a mini dragon for massive damage. That's a huge thing. So it's a lot more like gamey and, Devil May Cry cool style points with the bow. Light bowgun kind of feels like light bowgun from World with some minor adjustments. The drum magazine, I call it, or rapid fire energy as the game calls it, a very, very fun mechanic that doesn't feel like it doesn't make light bowgun overpowered, and it doesn't make it lame. So very quickly, the rapid fire mechanic is it's a resource bar. It restores slowly over time or when you're attacking, and it picks certain bullets to make rapid fire. So for the sake of the demo, it was normal shots, spread shots, and thunder shots. Thunder shots and spread became rapid fire. They are not normally rapid fire, but when you put on rapid fire mode, they become rapid fire. And normal shot level 2 is rapid fire by default, so it became super rapid fire. Light bowgun also has a new mechanic where you can press circle after you after you shoot, your character will stand still for a second and let out an immediate second shot. It does less hits, but it does more damage. And in rapid fire mode, it does more damage, but your character braces themselves. So they get on one knee and they take the shot. Kind of risk and reward scenario. Which is fine. It's something I can choose to do. It's now the secondary, like light bowgun has the secondary shot that bow has. The spread shot, light bowgun now has that. And much like bow, you can choose when or when not to. So, cool, neat little trick. It will be a nice way for me to have a high uptime on my damage, but it makes the gameplay more risk and reward, which is fine. Kong explained kind of how the ammo system works, so I'm not gonna get into that. It's pretty much been standardized across the board, which should make gunning less intimidating for newer players. Bow by far got the biggest increase. Bow now has the resource management with the files and the tracer arrows. It has the whole new tracer arrow mechanic. Bow is... Some people might see bow as the longsword of ranged weapons, and I can't necessarily argue that sentiment. Bow is very user-friendly, and now with the tracer arrows, as long as you can manage that bar, which wasn't really that hard to do in the beta, and I imagine won't be in the main game, especially if there are skills to enhance it. I mean, you have fucking aimbot. Like, what more? Like, you have aimbot. Bow has aimbot. So, I will probably be maining bow because I found it fun to use. But if anybody says, oh, well, you're just using the ranged longsword, I'm not going to really argue with them because it kind of feels like that. It's not as blatantly bash your head into the wall and you'll still win as longsword, but it's not far behind in my opinion. And this is coming from a guy who's using it. So anyway, yeah, that's my brief thing. I don't want to ramble too long. Want to get to Wolf. Yeah, range weapons feel fine. Focus mode feels fine on the range weapons. So cool. 2 thumbs up. On to you, my friend.
Yeah, I agree with Kong. Focus mode feels powerful. It feels like it's the best mechanic that they ever introduced when they started their gimmicks in Monster Hunter. Focus mode is probably my favorite so far. But I'd also agree that it does take away from the understanding your positioning with the weapons and understanding how to take your time to learn both the monster, the fight, and your avatar with whatever weapon you choose. However, out of the 14 weapons, I play with 5 different weapons personally. I think I play with the most weapons consistently out of all of us. If anybody else beats me, then kudos to them because I don't like making up my mind on things. So I always jump around different weapons. The 5 weapons I played, starting with the 5th one, was the insect glaive. After playing it, it doesn't really feel bad. I know I had mentioned before that I'm going to completely end that weapon, which is true. I am going to completely drop the weapon. But overall, if you are playing the insect glaive, and from my understanding of the insect glaive, they made it easier to collect your power-ups. They made it easier to maintain your power-ups. But the weapon does feel grounded. It doesn't feel as fluid as it used to. It doesn't feel like you went from being kind of like the old school longsword, which was slow, horizontal, vertical strikes, to the new school longsword, which is fast paced, or even akin to dual blades. It feels like it's a nice in between. Now it got dramatically slowed down. Aerial attacks are still there, but it's not prominent, and it doesn't even feel as strong as they used to. So it is what it is with the insect glaive. It's not the king it used to be when it first came out. Light bowgun, too many people's talked about it already. In my opinion, light bowgun is one of the best weapons in the game. Evasive, fast, strong, easy to use. Can't go wrong if you pick it up, whether you're new at the game or if you're a veteran. Light bowgun is always going to be it's a naturally amazing weapon. Sword and shield, again, for me, sword and shield I feel like it's an extremely strong weapon. even if you disagree with me and say that it's not overpowered, I do feel it's an overpowered weapon. Sword and Shield has a hop in between combos now, and I still have yet to figure out if that hop has invincibility frames, because sometimes I feel like the monster attack went through me. Sometimes I do get hit, but I don't know if it's timing. I don't know if it's like the hop that Lance used to have in older games that had invincibility frames. But to be able to roll, cancel your attacks, and still have a new hop mechanic,
FADC.
crazy. Freaking crazy. Plus you can still use your items with your weapon out. And then it still has its perfect combo. And then on top of that, Sword and Shield now beats the Insect Glaive when it comes to mounting. It consistently, it's Sword and Shield, amazing weapon. I can never see myself not playing a Monster Hunter and not having my Sword and Shield sets. Perfect weapon. Heavy bowgun for me is a beast of a weapon. I don't see myself using any other gunning weapon in this game. The rapid fire mode, the machine gun mode it has, auto guard, the weapon feels faster. It feels like I'm not signing my own death sentence by simply walking up with it anymore. And then it has like the because it's a guard weapon, it now can take advantage of the clash mechanic. So it's like they gave it this nice amount of defensive abilities, but also kept its insane offensive trait that it's supposed to be. So heavy bowgun, I enjoyed it. It's definitely going to be one of my second main weapon. Second only to my heart's true and tried and true pride and joy is the greatsword. I feel like of all 5 weapons I tested, the greatsword got the best. It is the winner hands down on changes and upgrades. The ability to charge and turn almost completely 360 degrees, I feel like is a godsend, because the thing about the greatsword that always made it hard to master was getting the positioning correct to always hit that sweet spot. And with the ability to charge and turn, you now have more leverage when fighting monsters that likes to move, or monsters that act like they had too much sugar in their system, like Dojugama. It was very easy to hit them on certain spots because of the simple fact that I can turn with my weapon and finish my level 3 charge. Plus, Greatsword is a guarding weapon. So typically in old Monster Hunter games, you wouldn't even guard with the Greatsword. It's a move that you never use. But now that there's the clash mechanic, the Greatsword's guard now has a more purposeful meaning to it. So now I keep in mind when I'm using Greatsword is, hey, I can guard with this weapon, and if I guard the right attack, I can get a big hit out on the monster. A defensive, offensive move, which is perfect for an offensive weapon. It feels faster when I'm sheathing. It feels faster walking around with the weapon out. It's like the two heavy weapons got a speed increase, in my personal opinion. And the upswing, so the Greatsword's strongest normal attack was the upswing, where it would send hunters flying, now has a charge mechanic to it, which again, it's overlap, right? Overlap is you get the big hit, but you also get to abuse what the weapon is good at, and what the greatsword is good at, or what its main way of dealing damage is with charging. So to be able to now charge the upswing to a level 3 charge, hit the monster out of the sky, or just deal an insane amount of damage, what I assume that charge attack would be a very powerful charge attack, is again phenomenal. The weapon needed it. It fits the weapon. It fits the idea of the weapon. It was something that the greatsword I never thought needed. But it's an amazing mechanic. I have to still master it to use it more often. So the videos that I have for my gameplay, I don't use it much or at all. But the fact to know that it's there, it's nice. Um, if I could have the hammer mechanic that allows the weapon to dash forward, like the hammer can in this game, the greatsword to me would be the perfect weapon. But you can't have perfect, or else everybody would play greatsword, right?
Okay.
But the only thing is that I disagree with you guys is, and I have gameplay of it, is the hitting with the sword and shield and the insect glaive. I experience where it's like using a paintbrush versus actually cutting into the monster. But the greatsword had a lot of hit stops on it. It had a lot, and I actually have gameplay for it. So once I go through the videos, I'll be able to clip those. But it did, especially with my level 3 charges. It was I felt the weapon hit and go through the monster like in old Monster Hunter games. Or even some attacks on focus mode. Like if I did focus mode, the side slash where he's like running with the sword to the side of the monster, on Dojugama going from the back to the front, I could feel it. Like there was a resistance. So I'm cutting through the monster. But when I did it the opposite direction, it didn't feel like that. So I don't know if that's a programming thing or if that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm not really sure. But that was my experience, and I'll try to find the video clips of the Great Sword, I guess using hit stop, if that's what it's really called, to to show the impact of how powerful it really is. Man, I just love the weapon. It was I just, I, I'm happy. I'm Great Sword. That's it. Every Monster Hunter game, I'm happy with the Great Sword. So it's for me, it's never going to be a weapon that I drop. My two leading weapons is my combo weapons will definitely be Great Sword and Heavy Bowgun. Yeah. So that's it from me when it comes to the
Great.
weapons.
So let's do this to end it. Wolf, you can tell us your connection and system performance thing, and it'll kind of go in reverse order. So it'll be Wolf, Gunner, Esoteric, and then I'll close it out.
I had no issues with performance. Connection wise, I think I only had an issue with getting into a lobby maybe one day, which I assume is just because it's a beta. It can't be perfect. Having or seeing so many people running around in the lobby at one time, it gave me Final Fantasy 14 feelings, which is nice and bad at the same time. But I digress. Other than that, I think it was pretty powerful. It was a pretty strong demo. And it makes me look forward to the game.
Okay, yeah, mine. Game performed well. Wired connection on PlayStation 5, no issues, no horribly dropped frames. Once I fixed and put the game into performance mode, it was fine. 60 FPS across the board, no weird glitches, no getting disconnected from a room. I did have a little problem getting into a lobby, but that was when Xbox and PC joined the beta, so I just chalked that up to more people filling up the pool. So, yeah, other than that, it was a fine beta, no issues. And if it stays like that for main game, we're good.
I guess I'll go next. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Minimal issues on my end. The only time that I've had issues was joining the, I believe you call it the link shell or the link shell equivalent when I was trying to hunt with you guys. But besides that, everything ran smooth.
All right, so for me, same sentiment. The connection was fine. I only got kicked, I think, twice the entire time, and it only happened, I think, the last day of the beta, and then maybe once when Xbox and PC players joined the beta. Other than that, it was fine. Performance, I never had any like major graphical issues. I did play on the slim PS5, so take that for what it's worth. I did play via a wired hard connection. I don't believe in Wi-Fi really. if I could avoid it. So I didn't have any connection issues, and the performance was pretty good. So I can't tell you if I was on 30 or 60. I was playing on performance mode or whatever you call it, like where it prioritizes the performance of the game over fidelity, because I'm far from a graphics
it's
whore.
performance mode.
So the game, it played well. It felt, in terms of connection and overall performance, it was perfect. So with that being said, this was a longer episode, so apologies, but it's a lot to talk about, and we got a 4-man panel, so you have to forgive us. But if you did enjoy the conversation, leave a like on the video, subscribe. We're going to be doing more content like this every week. So we publish a podcast every Wednesday Eastern Standard Time at 12 p.m. So subscribe so that you're notified when that goes live. And we cover a variety of topics. We do tier list episodes, we do opinion pieces, we do video game breakdowns and conversations, things like this. We also do 2-minute reviews on various games that specifically Esoteric plays on stream, as well as unboxing videos for like various collector's editions. So check that content out as well. Check the description down below for our social media presence. So we have a presence on Facebook, Twitter /X, Instagram, TikTok. There's a Discord as well with a small community, as well as the Logical Gamers Twitch stream, which is the main meat and potatoes of the gaming content. So definitely check out Mr. Esoteric on the Logical Gamers TV Twitch channel. There's a link down there. Make sure you hit the follow button and check out Mr. Esoteric. He streams 2-3 times a week. He plays a variety of games, and it's a pretty good time. We have a pretty good community. I don't think you would regret it. So with that being said, gentlemen, we will see you next week. Viewers, we will see you next week. Have a great day. Happy holidays. Peace.
Bye.
Later.
Take it easy.